Walter Briggs had worked second shift at the Rexton manufacturing plant for nearly 15 years, and in all that time, no one had ever seen him late. Not once. He always arrived 10 minutes early, clocked in without a word, and settled into his routine with the kind of consistency that rarely invited questions. To most of the younger guys, he was just Old Man Briggs, quiet, stiff, maybe a little slow. He wore the same faded denim jacket every day, no logos, no patches, just layers of wear and a few odd stains that never quite washed out. His boots were steel-toed and scuffed, worn thin near the heel, and his cap was a plain gray one with no brand, no message. Just fabric, just silence. He didn't talk much during breaks. He'd sit near the heater in winter, sipping black coffee from a dented metal thermos, listening to the room buzz with football trash talk and weekend plans. If someone greeted him, he gave a low, "Morning." If someone made a joke at his expense, he didn't react. He just looked back at them with gravel-colored eyes that didn't blink, then returned to whatever quiet task he had taken on, fixing a belt, calibrating a gear, cleaning something no one else wanted to touch. There were rumors, of course. Some said he'd served in the military. Others joked he probably fought in the Great Nap and forgot where he put his medals. It was always said half laughing, half dismissive. Walter never corrected them. But there was something about him, the way he moved, not fast, but precise. The way he always sat with his back to the wall. The way he never needed a manual to fix anything, even the new machines. When the belts jammed or the hydraulics buckled, the foreman didn't call the young guys. He called Walter. Still, no one really knew him. He didn't hang around after hours. He didn't go to barbecues or softball games. He didn't talk about family. He just came, worked, and left. And maybe that's why on one foggy Tuesday morning in February, when the doors to the break room swung open and a young Navy SEAL stepped inside, dressed in full uniform, boots gleaming, posture rigid, everyone froze. Because the man didn't look around the room. He didn't ask for help. He walked straight toward Walter Briggs and spoke a name that no one else was supposed to know. The young man stood firm, just a few feet from Walter, as if distance itself had meaning. His uniform was perfect, desert tan, pressed without a crease out of place. His name tag read T. Dawson, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the word he said, solace. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a question. It was a key, a code word. And when he said it, the entire break room changed. Forks froze midway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. The air felt heavier. No one knew why. They had no idea what the word meant, but they felt its weight. Even the vending machine stopped humming, as if technology itself understood that something ancient had just been spoken aloud. Walter didn't blink. He didn't move. He just raised his head slowly, his expression unreadable, and locked eyes with the SEAL. The two stared at each other in silence for what felt like a full minute. Then Walter stood. He stood like a man who had been sitting not because he was tired, but because he was waiting. His back was straight, his movements deliberate. As he rose, everyone in the room instinctively stepped back, as if gravity had shifted and he was suddenly the center of it all. The SEAL didn't salute. Walter didn't return any gesture, but there was something exchanged. Not in words, but in posture, in breath. The kind of respect spoken only between men who had walked the same edge and lived to regret it. "What took you so long?" Walter finally asked, his voice low and gravelly, like stone dragged across wood. Dawson's voice was steadier. "The name came up, twice in the last week." Walter nodded once. No surprise. "So the ghosts are moving again." "They never stopped, sir." Around them, the break room remained frozen. A few of the younger guys looked between each other, confused. Someone muttered, "What's going on?" Another whispered, "Who's Solace?" No one answered. because no one could. The foreman stepped into the room, clearly sensing the tension. "Everything all right in here?" Dawson turned to him. "Just a check-in, sir." Walter looked at Dawson. "Not here." The SEAL nodded. Without a word, the two walked out of the break room. Chairs scraped, people stepped aside, making a path like they were clearing space for something sacred. Walter moved differently now. Not like an old man with tired joints, but like someone reclaiming muscle memory, like someone remembering who he used to be. As they stepped outside, a black SUV idled by the curb, engine soft, windows tinted. Dawson opened the back hatch and retrieved a wooden case, worn, sealed with brass latches. Walter's eyes didn't leave it. Dawson set the box on the hood, unlatched it, and slowly opened the lid. Inside lay a folded black flag. On top, a patch. Wings spread, a cracked compass stitched in faded red. Walter's face changed. Not dramatically, but in a way only a few would notice. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened, not with fear or sadness, but with recognition. Dawson's voice dropped. "It was found in a burn locker, Morocco. No ID, no trace. Just this, and a note." He handed Walter a small slip of paper, yellowed, creased. Walter read it. "For solace, in case the world forgets." He closed his eyes, just for a moment. Then he opened them again, and whatever had been sleeping behind them was awake now. "This isn't just a visit, is it?" he said. Dawson shook his head. "We need you back, sir." The wind had picked up outside the factory, stirring the February mist into restless curls. Walter stood over the open box, the black flag and worn patch staring up at him like a ghost from a former life. He didn't touch it. Not yet. Just the sight of it seemed to call back sounds, smells, things buried so deep he'd convinced himself they weren't real. But they were. He looked up at Dawson. "You said the name's been used twice." "Yes, sir. Once in Lagos, the other in Ankara. Intercepts both mentioned Solace as an active node." Walter exhaled slowly through his nose. "It was supposed to be scrubbed, burned, buried with the rest of them." Dawson didn't argue. "Somebody found a way in. They're trying to reassemble the framework, not to activate it, to sell it." That made Walter blink. For the first time, a flicker of emotion cracked through the calm. Not fear, not confusion. Rage. "Solace wasn't a product," Walter growled. "It wasn't a system. It was a last resort doctrine built on lives no one dared write down." Dawson nodded. "And that's exactly why they want it. The files were redacted, but the operational impact left traces, the kind you can't erase from the shadows." Walter turned away facing the parking lot. "You didn't come here just to warn me." "No, sir." "You want me to unlock the cache." Dawson didn't speak. He didn't need to. Walter took one more glance at the wooden case. The patch was still there. The raven, wings out, clutching a broken compass. The emblem of a unit that officially never existed. Ghost Team. 9. 6 men, no country, no medals, only missions no one else would touch. Of the 6, only Walter survived. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small brass key that hadn't seen daylight in 20 years. It had been taped to the inside of his thermos lid all this time, out of sight, just in case. Dawson watched in silence as Walter walked to the edge of the lot, toward the rusted chain-link fence that bordered the loading bay. Beyond it, a stretch of woods, and behind the trees, an abandoned substation, long condemned, boarded up, forgotten. Exactly where Walter had left it. They made the walk in silence. No questions, no explanations. The kind of walk where each step feels like time folding in on itself. When they reached the substation, Walter pulled aside a tangle of vines, revealing a steel door welded shut. Or so it seemed. He tapped 3 times, paused, tapped 2 more. With a metallic click, a hidden seam revealed itself. Walter turned the key. Inside was pitch black, but he moved with certainty. The layout hadn't changed. His hands found the panel, slid back the false wall, and there it was. A military-grade duffel bag and a sealed lockbox with no insignia, no numbers, just a small card taped to the top. Solace, should this name return, activate Protocol Echo. Walter opened the duffel. Inside, a prepaid sat phone, backup IDs, encrypted maps, and a pistol he hadn't touched in over a decade. But it was clean. Loaded. He turned to Dawson. How long do I have? They're moving fast. We've got 72 hours before the buyer meets the broker in Marseille. Walter checked the map. And where's the leak? Langley. Of course. The irony burned. Walter zipped the bag shut. You can handle the route logistics? Yes, sir. And extraction? Dawson nodded. 2 ex-ghosts are standing by in Europe. They've stayed dark. They'll only respond to your ping. Walter shouldered the duffel, suddenly taller, heavier. As if the bag didn't just carry gear, it carried memory, missions, names, graves. I buried this life for a reason, he muttered. Dawson said nothing. But if they're dragging Solace out into daylight... Walter paused, turning to the young SEAL. Then someone needs to remind them why we locked it away to begin with. Dawson straightened his spine. Sir, there's one more thing. He handed Walter a flash drive. It has the last known photo of the man who initiated the breach. Walter plugged it into a small portable screen. The image flickered to life. His breath caught. It wasn't just a leak. It was a betrayal. The man on the screen had once been part of his team. A man Walter had buried, or so he thought. His voice turned to stone. Get me to France. They touched down in southern France under the cover of fog. No military escort, no official clearance. Just 2 men, one young, one old, walking through a forgotten gate at a private airstrip where no one asked questions and no cameras were pointed toward the ground. Walter Briggs hadn't worn a holster in years, but the way he moved, the way he adjusted the strap and checked the magazine, it was as if time had been paused, not lost. Dawson had seen a lot in his short but intense career, but even he couldn't hide his awe. They met with the handlers at a decommissioned vineyard outside Marseille. The place had once been beautiful. Stone arches, grapevines curled like veins, but now it was a ghost estate, bought under a shell company and repurposed into an intelligence dead zone. Inside, a map spread across a table, 3 photos, 1 building. Dawson pointed to a modern glass structure downtown. Broker meets buyer here. 2 hours. Buyer's just muscle. The broker, we believe it's Lachlan Rain. Walter stared. Rain's dead. Dawson shook his head. Apparently not. He changed his face, but not his methods. Rain had once been Walter's teammate. Ghost Team 9. A brilliant tactician, fluent in 6 languages and utterly ruthless. He was presumed KIA during the Nairobi blackout op, the same mission that fractured the entire team. But if he was alive, and selling Ghost Protocol to the highest bidder, that wasn't just betrayal. That was treason. Walter looked up. We're not here to negotiate. No, sir, Dawson confirmed. We're here to end it. The handlers handed Walter an earpiece. No drones, no satellites. This had to be done the way it started. On foot, in silence. As they approached the building, Walter felt something in his chest he hadn't felt since Dara Pass. Not fear, but awareness. The city buzzed around them, ordinary lives ticking forward, unaware that deep inside one glass tower, the blueprint for weaponized ghost networks was about to be sold to the wrong hands. They split up. Dawson took the west entrance. Walter moved through a service corridor. Every step echoed with memory. Every security camera avoided, every stairwell taken in darkness. It all returned. At exactly 12:47 p.m., Walter reached the observation floor. There he was, Lachlan Rain, grayer, thinner, eyes like blades. He sat across from a man in a silk suit with a briefcase full of digital keys. On the table, a drive labeled Solace Core. Walter stepped into the light. "Lachlan?" The room froze. The broker turned and smiled. "Walter," he said softly. "Didn't think they'd send the graveyard." Walter didn't blink. They didn't. I walked out on my own. Rain stood slowly, hands raised slightly. "You could have stayed buried. No one would have blamed you." Walter's voice dropped to gravel. "And let you sell the names of dead men for a payout?" "I'm not the traitor," Rain snapped. "I'm the one who survived the lie." In that moment, time stilled. The buyer reached for his case. Walter's hand moved faster. The room exploded in motion. Dawson came in from the other side, weapons drawn, shouting French and English. The buyer dropped. Rain didn't. He lunged. The two former ghosts collided, not like men, but like ideologies. Training met training. Memory met betrayal. And in the end, it was Walter who stood above him, pinning Rain to the cold floor. "You were family," Walter said. "And they left us to rot," Rain hissed. "I just made use of the bones." Walter didn't reply. He handed Rain to the French intelligence team already sweeping the floor. As he walked out, Dawson beside him, Walter handed him the Solace drive. "You're not just carrying data," he said. "You're carrying graves." Dawson nodded. "I know, sir." Walter didn't respond. He just looked up at the sky, and for the first time in decades, it looked lighter. The briefing room back in the States was dimly lit, far from the public eye. No cameras, no journalists, just a handful of officers and analysts who understood what the words Ghost Protocol truly meant. Walter didn't sit at the table. He stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at a horizon that no longer seemed so far away. Dawson stood beside him, younger but now carrying something older behind his eyes, a weight, a respect, a knowing. The debrief had gone quietly. Rain was in custody. The buyer had disappeared, but the drive was recovered. No media covered the event. No articles praised Walter's role, and that was how it was supposed to be. Ghosts don't get ceremonies. They get closure. "You could have stayed gone," Dawson said quietly. Walter gave a faint nod. "I did, for as long as I could." "But you came back." Walter finally turned. His eyes, though clouded with age, held a fire that hadn't dimmed. "Because someone remembered my name, and because silence only protects truth when the right people hold it." Dawson reached into his coat and handed Walter something small. The patch. The raven with the broken compass. It had been cleaned, pressed into a new frame. "We keep forgetting," Dawson said, "that legends are still walking among us." Walter didn't answer. He just took the patch and stared at it for a long moment. Then, without a word, he turned and pinned it, not to his chest, but to the wall, beside a faded photograph of his old team. Ghost Team 9, 6 men. Only one still standing. Later that night, Walter walked alone through the quiet streets of his neighborhood. No suit, no medals, just boots and a coat and a quiet mind. When he passed the small diner on 6th Avenue, the waitress inside looked up and smiled through the glass. He nodded, kept walking. At the bus stop, a young boy glanced at him and asked, Were you in the army? Walter paused, looked down, and after a moment smiled just enough. No, he said softly. I was something else. And he walked on.
If this story touched your heart, we'd be honored to have you with us. Each day we share quiet moments that remind us what still matters. You can subscribe below to join us.